Yep, I feel dead inside. Greetings fellow gamers, and this time around, before I even say a word, I feel morally obligated to give a huge spoiler warning right here. Let's be as clear as can be, do not watch this video if you haven't played Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful. Seriously, I do not want to ruin what I consider to be two of the best games ever conceived to anybody. So just pause this video, put it on watch it later, and marathon a playthrough of the games. Trust me, it's worth it. So, anyway, about Lisa. Did I mention that I consider it to be one of the best sagas of games ever conceived? Dingaling, my man, I don't know how you managed to do it, but you did it. Great graphics, polished design, fun gameplay, original concepts and events, great attention to detail, and of course, amazing story. I'm not about to waste anybody's time here. If you stayed after the warning at the beginning, you know this game is pretty darn good. Yet, when I played it recently, something really weird happened to me. I reached the final battle against Dr. Yado in the Joyful, and at that point, Buddy began to hallucinate. I saw Rando one last time, and then Brad, and then I relived all the memories that Brad and Buddy, father and daughter, had spent together. And then Brad gave his final speech and I felt nothing. In front of what should have been the heaviest, most heartbreaking moment of the entire saga, I couldn't feel anything. I just sat there, in my chair, confused and broken. For a while this kept me thinking. I've cried with other happier, more light-hearted games, so why couldn't I shed a single tear with Lisa? Only after a long while contemplating it, did I finally understand the cause of my apparent indifference. You see, I had somehow underestimated the game, and particularly its narrative. Lisa's storytelling, I realized, is like nothing I've ever seen in any other game. But let's not beat around the bush anymore, I'll get right into analyzing this game's story. Right off the bat, throughout the beginning sequence of a young Brad being bullied and abused, Lisa sets a mood and then keeps it intact throughout the entire game. If I had to describe this atmosphere with a single word, I would say it's very human. Many stories nowadays try to justify the actions of all of their characters in some way. Now the method through which these actions are justified usually consists in pointing out that they come from a place of virtue, from genuine and selfless feelings such as love or compassion. Lisa does the literal exact opposite of this. Almost every single character in the game is driven by biases and selfish feelings. Now of course this would be expected in a post-apocalyptic setting in which most NPCs are violent, insane and desperate. But even the protagonist, his childhood friends and the main villains are all motivated by negative feelings, some of which are not even connected at all to the terrible situation they find themselves in. And I'm not just talking about the general big choices and ultimate goals of every character. The game makes sure from the very beginning to show the player that they are not shiny examples of moral behavior. When Brad finds Buddy for the first time, his friends seem amazed, but at the same time kind of disinterested. Keep in mind that this is probably the only female left in the world for all they know, and the only chance at a future that they could possibly have. Then they get a brilliant idea. Give the baby to Rando. Because it's the easiest way to keep the baby safe and ensure the future of humanity, you say? Nope. To receive rewards and live comfortably themselves, of course. But at the same time, isn't that the logical thing to do? Why would you risk yourself taking care of the baby when you can exchange it for valuable supplies and shelter? This is where Lisa separates itself from many other games. In stories such as Undertale, for the sake of conveying raw emotions, the characters are made to be simple, at least from an ethical point of view. It's very easy to point out who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, and the mistakes of each character in their judgments and decisions. With Lisa, every character is a bit more complex. They are motivated by biases, and their intentions are not exactly pure, yet they feel justified, because I, as a person, can see the logic of a character being selfish, since I myself am not morally perfect. Of course, I know what many of you are thinking. This kind of narrative is not exactly revolutionary. It can be found in many books, TV shows, movies, and so on. But there's the catch. Video games very rarely have this kind of story, and that's due to the fact that a video game is interactive. It needs its players to feel invested and satisfied while playing through its story. For that very reason, most video games establish a very clear good guy that we're supposed to root for, and a very clear bad guy that we should want to defeat. Even in cases such as God of War, where the whole story is about revenge, the developers made sure to make Zeus, the final boss, arrogant, violent, and just generally a prick, when he really has no reason to be so, just to make sure that the player will want to kill him. In other cases, such as Grand Theft Auto, sure, you have a lot of fun wreaking havoc upon the city and murdering countless civilians, but when it comes time to play the main missions and experience the actual story, the villains are always worse in some way than the protagonist. They are backstabbers and manipulators, they have no honor, they threaten to do more damage to the city, and so on. Instead, at least in Lisa the Painful, Brad, the main protagonist, is not only revealed to be the victim of actual vices, as it is addressed that he's a drug addict and a drunkard, but it is also heavily implied that he wants to protect Buddy not only out of the love in his heart, but out of the guilt he feels toward the sister he couldn't save. Much like everyone else, he seems to want to use and keep Buddy for his own selfish reasons. But if that's the case, then how could I, as the player, feel invested in his character and in helping him reach his final goal? The answer lies in Lisa's ingenious way to make the player identify with the protagonist, not only through the story, but also through gameplay elements. The only true genuine moment of happiness that I experienced when playing Lisa comes right after the game shows you how terrible Brad's youth was with his father, and it is the beginning montage in which you can see Buddy growing up under the care of Brad. For once, there's no evil or selfish intentions, just a dad trying to take care and raise her daughter the best he can. So when this fleeting joy is taken away along with Buddy and substituted with so many depressing and violent situations, I, much like Brad, wanted to save her for my own selfish reasons. It didn't matter if it was fake or fragile, or if it was ultimately harmful for the future of mankind. I longed to see and feel that illusion of a happy and peaceful family once more. And that's the thing. As sick as it may sound, concepts like the future of mankind mean nothing to me. As the player, I care for the game and its plot only as means of entertainment. Lisa is aware of this and uses it to its advantage. Notice how many times in the story it seems you are very close to reaching Buddy, but then it's revealed that she's actually in another castle. Heck, many times you actually get to her, but she keeps slipping away. Apart from this, it's also important to note that the game is kind of slow in its pacing, as most RPGs are, and it is also quite difficult in certain sections, and requires you to backtrack a lot, especially if you don't know the order of the places where you need to go. What all of these factors do is basically transform Buddy into more and more of a tantalizing objective to the player. For every hour of effort and for every time she was denied to me, I became more and more obsessed with reaching Buddy, not as a person, but as a purpose, the one that gave sense to my struggles. By the end of the game, player and Brad are connected in a way that's smarter and more subtle than just breaking the fourth wall and saying, "Psych, it was you the entire time!" Both of us, in the eyes of the in-universe characters, were obsessed, emotionless pricks who care not for friends, enemies, or the world, but Buddy. Just Buddy. Another element that really made me want to root for Brad is the choices that the game forces me to make. Several times I was confronted by Bosso, among others, who forced me to decide between lovely options such as lose all the items I had or kill one or several of my party members. This mechanic, at first glance introduced just to increase the difficulty and stakes, actually gives the player a lot of control over the story. You can manipulate the character of Brad and experience yourself the pressure of making an honestly difficult choice in an environment where there's not really a right answer. Will you be selfish or will you be selfless? Do you give more worth to the life of your fellow companions or to the items that aid you in battle? The game always clearly lays out the consequences of each choice and never punishes you particularly for picking one or the other. You really don't feel like Brad is making a choice, but you, because it will affect your playthrough just as much as they do the story. But at the same time, it does allow you to define the character of Brad, who will adapt to your own moral values and it's so good! At the end of the game, Brad's final words to Lisa are a question. Did I do good? And that's the point where the connection between him and I grew stronger than ever. Truth is, I still have no idea. Was I doing the right thing? Was I truly selfless? Was my mission honorable? Did Brad truly love Buddy? I honestly don't know, and I get the feeling that he doesn't either. The ability to capture the full complexity of human emotion, the constant moral confusion that plagues human existence and still manage to make me feel directly invested in the game, to me is just genius. But I still got one more game to talk about, right? Lisa the Joyful. Now, regarding this masterful DLC, I just have two aspects to really praise. The first is the inclusion of Rando. Already playing an important role in the Painful, Rando joins your party in the DLC and fights alongside Buddy. What makes Rando truly special in the narrative of this story is the fact that, unlike all the other characters in the game, he is truly motivated by pure, genuine, and dare I say heroic feelings. Out of anyone in the story, he's the only one to approach Buddy without any selfish interests in mind. On the contrary, he sees the girl as an opportunity to give his destroyed world a future. And, get this, he's the first character to try and befriend her. But what's truly important is that, despite failing in his ultimate goal of saving the entire world, Rando was the only character who's shown to have positive influence on others. Remember Brad's childhood friends? Well, initially they only wanted a better life for themselves, but after entering Rando's army, they are determined to get the girl to the boss and to ensure the future of humanity, being willing to endure pain and even die for that cause. That is downright heroic for characters that were once, like any other in the game, selfish and mediocre. In the end, Rando was, even if on a smaller scale, able to change the world and the people around him. But his influence doesn't just limit itself to side characters. Enter Buddy. Like it's proven to be a trend in these games, Buddy is guided by selfish and violent impulses. But, once again, she feels completely justified. As if being born in a post-apocalyptic world wasn't enough, she was abused and attacked by pretty much everybody because of being the only female in the world, and the one good father figure she came across was killed by Brad, who, by the way, taught her how to kill and defend herself ever since she was a child. However, unlike the other characters, identifying with Buddy becomes a bit harder, even when her behavior does make sense. This is mostly due to the fact that she's been stripped of any sense of compassion, and her goal is pretty much to become such a feared killer that no one will ever want to step on her way. She also has a limited and different view of the world, as, pretty much, she doesn't know any world except for the terrible one she was born into. She almost risks being too much of an apathetic character with a goal that it really couldn't get behind. But that's when Rando comes in. Through her interactions with Rando, you see Buddy, slowly but surely, changing and growing attached to her companion. A shimmer of a kind and loving person can be perceived behind her apparent cold and detached dialogue. And then it all comes full circle when Buddy grabs the barbed wire to save Rando and refuses to go. The choice of the barbed wire here is genius. Up until now, Buddy had the mentality of a merciless assassin, never take any unnecessary risks and stop only for what's useful. And yet, here she is, harming herself for the sake of Rando. But the biggest moment comes right after, when a man threatens to do to Buddy what she wanted to prevent all this time. He was going to abuse her, to sexually assault her, and even then, if the player makes the choice, she will hold on anyway, all for the sake of her brother. That is one of the best cases of character progression and evolution that I've seen, and it's done not through extensive dialogue, but through sheer experience, gameplay, and emotion. So I ask again, why didn't I cry with Lisa? The answer I've come up with is that it's because it's truly complex and human. The final moment didn't make me feel sad, it broke me, it made me think, it made me contemplate, and it made me question. Anyway, that was a nice and healthy rant about a game I love. And I find it amazing that I've talked for so long and there's still so many things that I didn't mention, such as this game's fantastic dark humor. But I guess I'll stop for now. So, what do you think? Did the final scene of the game make you cry? Or did you react as I did? Did my commentary add something new to your vision of this game? Or did you think it was all evident? Either way, I hope you share your opinion down in the comments. For now, thank you so much for watching and remember to keep your knowledge up!